welcome you all to the Forum of India Inspires. And this will be a talk on is meat eating a matter of personal choice? This will be a scientific analysis. And I'm truly grateful to India Inspires, in fact, not because you have called me here, but because you have taken a lead in giving this entire debate a new direction. That is, for the first time, we'll be like hearing somebody on talking on scientific lines. This has been a very hot topic in India in the recent times, and the debates have been primarily run on emotions, debates have been run on systems of belief, debates have been run on whatever media conceives to be right or wrong, or individual conceive to be what is right and wrong. Nobody so far has talked about what science says. So India Inspires has for the first time taken lead in this, and so far the debate has primarily focused on, involved basically people from media, people from various backgrounds including activists of all shades, politicians, people as diverse as people from Bollywood or from the fashion industry. And the debate has been primarily based on emotions, on the issue of whether people are free to have whatever they want in their own lunch. So this has been the debate, and the obvious common sense answer is that yes, it's a private matter. But during the discourse of this particular lecture, we'll see that whether in reality this is a private thing or not. So we'll be laying the issue threadbare. We'll examine it completely from the scientific point of view. We'll leave behind all the religious, cultural and political issues in this to begin with, and then we'll take on the debate out of the purview of this belief and faith and put it firmly in the realm of science. Also what we'll do is we'll ask certain questions. Is it about beef only, as has been the prime objection of media in recent times, or is it a wider debate about being non-vegetarian or vegetarian? We'll also ask whether is it more about beef as compared to other types of meat. We'll also ask if it's a local problem of India, or does it have global kind of, does it cross the national boundaries? Does it assume significance in the global context? Also, we'll examine in the end that if really this is a personal kind of a private matter to eat meat or eat whatever you want to eat, or in the Indian context particularly, we'll be discussing whether it's a secular matter anymore, as some of our learned journalists and people in the media have come to believe. The contents will broadly focus on the debate as such. I'll be introducing on the various kind of sections of the society as to what they have said, and then we'll go into the scientific aspects of this and consider at least 4 or 5 major impacts of meat eating on various ecosystems, on human health, on land, biodiversity, water, air, atmosphere, including climate change, which is the in thing. We'll also examine what are the scientific realities of this debate, and then we'll fix up the role and responsibility of Indian media in this context, in the scientific context, and also see what has been the role of Indian scientists so far and the role of individuals, all of us in this debate. In fact, before we venture into this, I would like you to understand one clear thing, that this is not a simple debate. This issue of meat eating is actually become relevant on a global scale, and it is such an issue which can not only wipe you and me out of existence, it can actually wipe all our future generations out of existence, and all life can be actually wiped out if we act irresponsibly with regard to our food. So this is a very serious debate, and therefore it's more important that we tackle it on a serious note rather than completely keep on debating about the emotional aspects of this. I would first of all, in fact, if you see the graphic, you would note that a lot of states tried to put meat ban into force some time back. Some of the courts were involved in this, the cases went to courts, emotions ran very high, some of this precipitated in some kind of violence which was very unfortunate. So a lot of things happened, and then some writers started to give their awards back and so on and so forth. So emotions have run extremely high on this debate. In fact, I would be quoting what the media has been saying so far. I would start with Rajdeep Sardesai, who is one of the leading kind of media person these days in India. He says that, in fact, he wrote a number of letters to, at least two, I think, to Chief Minister, Maharashtra's Chief Minister, Devendra Fadnavis, and had a debate with him. And he writes in these letters that the ban on meat was ill-conceived, number one. Number two, the people of Maharashtra last year did not vote for the imposition of cultural agenda of the RSS. He was forthright in this, including any forcible attempt to dictate what can be cooked in the kitchen in the name of Bharatiya Sanskriti. So he took the debate to a level where the agenda for meat ban appeared to be dictated by RSS and by the Hindu nationalists, and so on and so forth. In fact, he also was very forthright. The people of Maharashtra last year did not vote for the imposition of the cultural agenda of the RSS. So he decided as to what Maharashtra people actually voted for. As a media person, he actually took it upon himself to decide as to what they actually, to whom and to what, for what agenda they were voted for. Baka Dutt interviewed Hindu saint Sri Sadguru, and also initiated a debate in which certain questions were asked whether banning beef was fair in a multicultural society. It was a fair question. Is the ban about respecting sentiments, and is it about infringement of freedom? Also, what was asked was let live and let live. Whether this kind of slogan has been slaughtered at the political altar by the imposition of ban. In fact, when some of the people from the films, typically Sonam Kapoor, tweeted on certain aspects of this, she told, and people then retreated, people tweeted against her, Sonam Kapoor. Then she called those people bullies, in fact. So also Arnab Goswami debated on his television channel, and even he called the ban ridiculous even before the debate started. So while introducing the debate, he called this ridiculous actually. He also said that it's a question of equality, religious equality. If cow's meat was to be banned, then pork should be banned, which appears common sense wise, which appears okay, but we'll lay threadbare as to what is special about cow's meat and whether Mr. Arnab Goswami was correct or not. Sandeep Roy was very forthright. He said that the food ban actually tests our idea of secularism. So they took this entire debate of what you eat to the idea of secularism. Jagannathan, who is one of the saner voices, in this case was saying that the ban on beef is illiberal, so it is against the liberal traditions of India, and also that every Hindu has a right to revere his cow, but not to decide someone else's dietary habits. And then he said, it is time to remove the idea of cow protection or prohibition from the constitution. So he was challenging the basic idea of the constitution itself on this. Nidhi Razdan was forthright about the ban, saying from beef ban to porn ban to the battle in institutes like FTII, is India becoming a nanny state? So she was worried whether India was actually becoming a nanny state by such kind of bans. Chetan Bhagat said Maharashtra is behaving like a nagging wife, deciding what you eat, and when you can't find faults in it, or else sedition charges. So, and remember, Chetan Bhagat is a mechanical engineer from IIT-Delhi, and therefore should have had some kind of scientific vision. Unfortunately, he thought that Maharashtra was behaving like a nagging wife. Shobha De said, I just ate beef, come and murder me. She challenged the Hindu nationalists to murder her. Justice Markandeya Kadzu, who was the former Supreme Court judge and who was also the former chairman of the Press Council of India, and therefore he was a former regulator kind of over the press, said that I have eaten beef, instead of attacking helpless people, come to me. I have danda waiting for you and I am getting impatient. So these were the kind of languages being used some were calling it secular issues, some had been calling it infringement of personal rights and so on and so forth. Some were forthright saying that, oh, you come and kill me over this issue. Emotions have run extremely high on this issue. Shashi Tharoor, in an interview to Karan Thapar, said that this is about personal choice. In fact, I have always said that the entire meat ban issue in India is not about meat. It's about freedom. It's about the India we want to live in. So the bans were basically, in his opinion, were basically to certain extent kind of anti idea of freedom in the country itself. So the bans were basically against the freedom of individuals. That is what he said. In fact, a number of people were interviewed. Ravish Kumar interviewed Ovasi on this issue. Karan Thapar interviewed Shashi Tharoor. Arnab Goswami quizzed Amitabh Bachchan. Barka Dutt quizzed Sri Sadhguru. T News interviewed Baba Ramdev. And when no interviews were available, people like Sonakshi Sinha, Bollywood stars, some of them, Sonam Kapoor and Rishi Kapoor, etc., tweeted. So at least people vented their emotions, and wherever they could, they came out strongly against the ban. Sonam Kapoor said, our country is going to remain a third world nation because of this narrow-mindedness of a few people. So she was afraid that we will remain a third world nation. And out of the reactions that came to her, one of them was from Barka Dutt, who said that people are coming after you because they are bullies, and Omar Abdullah was kind of taking political advantage of this, and he said that, and we wonder why Bollywood stars don't take positions on issues that matter. He wanted Bollywood stars to actually take a position on this. Now this is very strange, on an issue which is scientific, completely scientific. These people want Bollywood stars and people from the fashion industry to take a position, which is a ridiculous kind of a thing. It can affect, and the point is, it can affect society on a vast scale. So this is by design. This is by design. They want people, activists, particularly activists, film actresses, and people from the fashion industry to make statements so that society at wide can be kind of, will be swayed by their own opinions. In summation, if you sum of all of these, what is clear is that the ban is illiberal, it is illogical, it is ridiculous, and it is motivated by the cultural agenda of the Hindu chauvinists, including the RSS. Number 2, those favoring the ban are actually communal and bullies. Number 3, meat ban is a death blow to the very idea of secularism. Number 4, by imposing the ban, India was fast becoming a nanny state. And number 5, eating is an act of personal freedom. It's one's personal business, and the government should not be interfering in this. Eating, therefore, assumes to be a personal it's a question of personal freedom, and it's also a secular matter. And such belief, and this is a belief, okay, this is not based on fact. So this was a complete belief, in fact, that my eating does not affect you. This is a belief, okay, it is not based on scientific data. We'll very shortly come to the scientific data. But this is a complete belief, and this belief has been bolstered by personal opinion of the journalists, views of some of these activists, some of whom love to call themselves rationalists, in fact, political opponents of the government, and through opinion makers from fashion and Bollywood industry. In fact, some of these Hindu saints were actually interviewed, and also what happened was Muslim and Christian religious leaders were also brought into the debate, and they had a lot of grievance against this ban for obvious reasons. So it was purely an emotional debate. But the entire thing, what happened was, this debate crystallized in terms of liberal versus illiberal, in terms of communal versus secular kind of notions. Society was therefore completely polarized on the basis of this belief that my eating is my personal thing and it does not affect you. And this has nothing to do with truth, as we'll see very shortly. And therefore, now we should go directly, I'll be going on the scientific viewpoint. We'll lay threadbare the problems with eating meat, and we'll see whether it makes sense when I say that my eating affects everyone else. I would be, in fact, during the course of this scientific debate, I would be categorizing the entire impacts of meat eating in 5 categories. Number 1 on human health, which may be a personal thing. to a certain extent. Number two, impacts on land, impacts on water, which are all common property resources, and also impacts on air, atmosphere, particularly the climate change. Also, we'll be covering impacts on biodiversity of land as well as water. So these 5 issues are what we'll be seeing. Before I really start this debate, there is a section of Indian media which has been saying that there is a if you don't eat meat, then there is a problem of food security. Okay, so I quote data from Food and Agricultural Organization of United Nations. So this data is extremely kind of authentic and can be taken at the face value. This says, if you read this table, it says edible protein supplied to the livestock that could be used for human nutrition is 77 million tons each year, whereas that given by these livestock. So livestock consumes 77 million tons of edible protein each year, and the protein supplied by the livestock for human nutrition is only 58 million tons. Okay, so net there is a loss. And this loss is not just in terms of protein, in terms of calories, in terms of energy, this loss is, relative loss is much higher. And why this has happened is because livestock do not, nowadays, especially in US, which is the largest consumer of meat, one of the largest consumers of meat, and in Europe, livestock consumes food, typically cows, for example, are given maize, okay. So they are consuming food which we eat. Okay, it's the same food almost. In fact, if you were to see the FAO data, Food and Agriculture Organization data, you would see that even for chicken feed and for pig feed both, the kind of feed which is given to them comprises of maize, wheat, barley, sorghum, soya meat, other oil seeds, as well as peas, fish meat, and so on and so forth. So most of this is consumed by humans also. And this has been deliberately done because you want the fat to grow. You don't want a chicken which does not have very high breasts. You want chicken breast to be kind of grown and very fatty. And this can only be done on concentrated diet. So concentrated diet is actually given to them. They are not fed normally now anymore. This demolishes the entire myth of food security by eating meat, because if you are eating meat, actually there is a conversion factor. Okay, so if a cow takes 10 kg of whatever feed is given to it, it will be able to produce only 1 kg of feed. So there is a conversion factor. So as soon as you go from one trophic level to another trophic level, what happens is you require around 10 to 15 kgs of feed, and then only 1 kg of fat will be there as a result. Also what is happening is animals are competing for crops with humans. Animals detract more from total food supply than they actually are providing. And number 4, they raise the overall demand and prices for crops and agricultural inputs, because they are one of the largest consumers now of maize, of wheat, etc., etc. And therefore, what happens is the crop prices are raised because of this demand. The only advantage is that in times of extreme acute crisis, what happens is you can depend, if your crops fail on a very wide scale, then you can depend upon meat, but that doesn't happen in India, because in India hardly the meat consumption is very low. We'll see those figures, and not many people eat meat. Secondly, we don't have that kind of crisis anymore in India. In fact, we are quite independent in terms of food, although individual commodities have to be kind of imported. But we don't face widespread, extreme, life-threatening kind of shortages. That is not there. I would actually show you World Watch data now, which again says that a calorie of beef, pork or poultry needs 11 to 17 calories of feed. So there is a conversion factor, as I said. So 17 up to 17 kind of calories are required to produce 1 calorie from the meat. And 80% of the soybean harvest is eaten by animals and not people. So whatever soybean is grown, especially in US, 80% of that is actually going to the livestock. It doesn't come to humans as such. Feed containing meat and bone meal is actually, so these cows are not vegetarian completely. Now what has happened is these cows are fed with food, because you want the fat to grow, with food which is often non-vegetarian itself. And therefore, because of that, mad cow diseases, etc. have started. Also, you require intensive quantities of water. Producing 8 ounces of beef can require 25,000 liters of water, and we'll see this in great details later on. And cows, pigs and chickens get 70% of all antimicrobial drugs in US. So resources are diverted to a very great extent. And remember, this antimicrobial drugs actually become a part of their fat. It comes back to you. So when you eat this meat, part of this will be actually coming back to your body. So there is a stark contrast between the rather modest economic contribution of the livestock on one hand and its important environmental and health dimensions. And it is against this background that we'll examine what kind of livestock environmental interactions need to be seen. We should first of all, we'll be focusing on the health impacts of meat. International and national public institutions I have deliberately given a reference which is old because since 1990s, universities, researchers have been warning that if you take fat and red meat, then what happens is you run into the kind of risk of cardiovascular diseases, diabetes and certain type of cancers. So this has been known to us from a long time, in fact. Also what happens is obesity, and 2 out of every 3 Americans are considered to be overweight or obese these days, primarily because of very high red meat or processed meat consumption. Obesity is caused because of excessive fat intakes, and obesity has led to over 1,20,000 preventable deaths each year in the United States. An obese person in America is likely to incur $14.29 more in medical expenses annually. And this data is coming from their own Center for Disease Control and Prevention from Atlanta, USA. Meat eaters are also more susceptible to a number of pathogens and have capacity to transmit diseases from animals to humans. Scientists are now estimating that more than 6 out of every 10, that is around 60%, of infectious diseases in humans are spread from animals. So basically they originate in the animals and then they come to you as infections. World Organization for Animal Health estimates that no less than 60% of human pathogens and 75% of recent emerging diseases are zoonotic in nature. Zoonotic diseases are those which can be passed between animals and humans. And they comprise a variety of agents like viruses, bacteria, parasites, fungi, etc., etc. So a lot of this disease is actually coming through the animals. A series of human diseases have origins in animals. Typical examples are common influenza, smallpox, tuberculosis, brucellosis, and many other internal parasitic diseases have typically in the form of tapeworms, threadworms, are basically transmitted through the consumption of animal products. Recent diseases like bird flu, which have taken the entire world by surprise, bird flu, Nipah virus, Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease, mad cow disease, E. coli infections, all of these are transmitted through meat. And meat also contains what is the heavy metals. So we have not evolved as humans, we have evolved, our bodies have evolved in lakhs of years, and we have not seen till the pre-industrialized era, we did not see many heavy metals intakes in our diets. But now what has happened is heavy metals are a part of diet now, and they are ingrained inside the food and they find their ways into our bodies. And since our kidneys are not designed, basically they have not learned, they have not evolved to eliminate these heavy metals get accumulated. This is called bioaccumulation technically. So these metals get accumulated inside our bodies, and because an adult can eat 10 chickens, maybe 15, 20, 100 chickens in his lifetime, and therefore all of that heavy metal will get inside your body. So each time it gets magnified. So this is called biomagnification. And we have clear evidence that skin, for example, will concentrate things like arsenic, nickel, chromium. Bones will have concentrated lead, strontium. Liver would have selenium. Digestive system will selectively absorb lead, arsenic, fluoride and pesticides, and so on and so forth. This causes huge amount of damage. What is also very, very serious is the presence of dioxins in meat. And this is really established in the West, that meat contains dioxins. Dioxins are compounds which are extremely, extremely toxic, even in the very, very, very small quantities. So you take a gram of dioxin, divide it into a million parts, that is 10 lakh parts. Take one part, again divide it into 10 lakh parts, so it becomes extremely small. Okay, so it's 1 millionth of a gram, and that is sufficient to cause you cancers and whatnot. So according to US EPA data, the adult safe daily intake is only 0.7 picogram per kg per day, and Americans are now consuming 0.94. So they are consuming around 34% higher dioxins. And dioxins accumulate inside the food chain, they persist there, and more than 90% of human exposure is through food, mainly through meat and dairy products, fish and shellfish. They can cause damage to the immune system, they can interfere with hormones, they can cause cancers. These are known figures coming from WHO, World Health Organization, and as recently as 2014, last year. Also, WHO has published 3 days back, WHO has published a report in which it says that processed meat ranks along with smoking as cancers. So processed meat is likely to cause kind of cancer to a very large extent. It increases the risk of colorectal cancer by 18%, and it is also linked to pancreatic and prostate cancers, also to the bowel cancers. So various type of meats will lead to various kind of cancers. This is established. This is again coming from World Health Organization. So the point is eating meat actually sustainable, even on a personal level? If you see this slide, you would note that, and this is coming from a poster which was displayed at Stanford University in US. Eating processed meat will increase your risk of mortality by as much as 20%. It also leads to higher risk of cardiovascular diseases by an extent of 16%, 20% higher risk of cancer due to processed feed. And if you eat a sandwich which is bacon basically, you lose 1 hour of your life each time you eat a sandwich. Let's examine the impacts on land of meat eating. Livestock is the single largest kind of use that humans are making now. So livestock is covering around 30% of the land surface of this planet. So that much amount of forest is gone, and that much amount of livestock is there on this planet, 30%. And 70% of all our agricultural land is actually is accounted by the livestock. And FAO's data, Food and Agricultural Organization's data, is saying that total length for grazing is around 26% of the ice-free terrestrial surface. So the amount of land available, 26% of that is just for grazing. Grazing land has got degraded in the process because of excessive grazing, and various estimates put this damage to 20 to 70%. So most of this land is also degraded actually. And total land for feed crop cultivation is another 3 to 4%. It's 33% of arable land, but overall around 30% of the land area which we have on this earth is being used for livestock cultivation. So it's a big industry. You grow livestock in numbers which otherwise in nature would not be there. And around 20% of world's pastures and rangeland has already degraded to various extents. And rapid expansion of pastures is kind of into some of the most vulnerable and valuable ecosystems, with 0.3 to 0.4% of forest is lost due to pastures annually. So annually there is a forest loss, okay, because of livestock making use of these as grazing grounds, or because their feed has to be kind of grown on this land. And 2 acres, the data from PETA says that 2 acres of rainforest are cleared every minute. So every minute we are losing 2 acres of prime forest just for livestock. The impact on biodiversity because of this is extremely high. Biodiversity is the base on which ecosystems thrive. So if you have a healthy ecosystem, then there will be many species in that. So it will be called a very robust kind of a system. But when degradation starts, species continue to die, and therefore biodiversity decreases for the system. Livestock are now accounting for around 20% of total terrestrial animal biomass, and as I said, 30% of the earth's surface is covered by them. Pasture expansion and rangeland degradation have vast negative consequences. Crop area expansion and intensification of livestock feed implies that you have to clear huge numbers of forests, forest area every time you tend to expand the industry. Livestock sector is also kind of playing havoc with the biodiversity because of a number of reasons, like deforestation, so you cut down the forests, land degradation, pollution, climate change, overfishing, sedimentation, and facilitation of invasion by alien species. So once original species die, alien species come to occupy those lands. We are, and FAO is again saying that we are in the area of unprecedented threats to biodiversity. It's saying that the loss of a species is very high. It's running 50 to 500 times of what it was earlier. So it's become very, very high now. And Worldwide Fund for Nature, which is another body which does a lot of research in this area, says that around 37% of terrestrial ecosystems report livestock as one of the current threats. Conservation International has identified 35 global hotspots of diversity which are under threat, and 65% of these have a threat because of livestock. Also, World Conservation Union comes out with a red list of threatened species each time, and they show that the world's threatened species are suffering habitat loss wherever livestock is a factor. So wherever livestock comes, immediately the biodiversity goes down. Also, what happens is water pollution and ammonia emissions are very high. So typically what happens is the livestock goes near the water body, takes water and discharges urine and feces almost simultaneously many times, and the same gets washed into the water body. So it's a leading cause of water pollution now. Livestock also affects climate change, and we will be discussing this in great details because this is one of the issues which is threatening the very existence of species on this planet, all life forms on this planet. Also, what happens is in US, this has been a major problem. They have been doing a factory fishing of, so not just fish for human consumption, but also fish acts as a feed many times for pork or for getting chickens. So it goes, the part of it is actually going into the meat industry also. And they have done the fishing so aggressively that there are around 23,000 factory ships that patrol the world's ocean now, and 1/3 of the planet's commercially fished species are already gone. They also indiscriminately kill and discard 200 million pounds of non-target species. So what happens is when you kill fish, you also capture a lot of other species which get killed in the process. So around 200 million pounds of these non-target species has also been killed. And because of this, United Nations is now saying that fishing operations are a net economic loss to society. So this is coming directly from United Nations. Let's see the impacts on water. Water is one resource which is water. In fact, all life comes through water. So unless water is there, there will not be any life forms. So water gives you a huge amount of life, but water also takes a lot of life in the form of diseases, in water related diseases and so on and so forth. And water is a commodity which is in shortage in most parts of the world. So you would see here in this graphic that there are water stresses in most of these areas. 85% of the world population lives in the driest half of the planet, and there are people, 783 million people still on this globe who do not have access to clean water, and 2.5 billion people who do not have access to safe sanitation. This is coming from United Nations 2 years back. In a water scarce world, livestock consumes around 8% of water for drinking, servicing, processing and irrigation of feed crops. Another 15% is lost in evapotranspiration. Water is, now this is only one part. This is directly going to the livestock. But the point is your food has immense water footprints, which means that, for example, if you have beef, 1 kg of beef, then to produce that, not that the cow has drunk this water, some water, the water was also used for washing, bathing, etc. But the water was also used for getting the feed for the cow. So you have irrigated those lands and used water. You have made fertilizers, you have made pesticides. Each of these processes would be consuming water. So you do a life cycle analysis kind of a thing, and you find out as to what 1 kg of beef implies, or 1 kg of pork implies, or whatever. So 1 kg of this will have huge amount of water inside. So 1 kg of potato can have some X quantities of water ingrained inside it, because that much of water is used to grow the feed, either the feed in case of non-vegetarian items, or irrigation and pesticides, fertilizers, etc., etc. And we drink around 2 to 4 liters of water each day, but we eat around 2000 to 5000 liters of water each day. So our food is, which seems to be solid, is actually containing a whole lot of water inside, and we are using this water very intensively actually when we eat food. So we drink very less water, but actually we are consuming water through other means, through food. And United Nations is also saying that there are projections that in the next 40 years, our population will grow by 2 to 3 billions, number one change. Number two, what is happening is not just that the population is growing, but the food consumption in the form of non-vegetarian items has been on the increase. So in at the end of this century, around 2000, we had a global average of 37 kg per capita, that is per person, per each year. And this has changed to 52 kg, this is estimated to change to 52 kg. So there would be a jump in the amount of non-vegetarian items that we take. Various estimates that indicate that if our business as usual scenario continues, then this earth will be insufficient. We would require around 3.5 kind of resources which we can get from 3.5 earths to kind of offset the population growth as well as the consumption patterns. So there are two kind of patterns. Number one is consumption growth, the growth in the consumption per capita, per person, and number one was the population itself is growing. Water intensive, there are certain foods which are very, very water intensive. For example, if you are consuming 1 kg of beef, this implies, this locks actually, 1 kg of beef is locked, there is 15,500 liters of water locked inside it. So when you consume 1 liter of beef, this is equivalent to spending 15,500 liters of water, which is huge amount. I mean, at your rooftop, you would have a 1000 liters tank most of the time. So this is more than that, 15,500 just to produce 1 kg of beef. And you can contrast this to the vegetarian items. Typically, tomatoes require 200 liters of water, and potatoes will require 250 liters of water for each kg. So the consumption, when you consume vegetarian food, the water consumption is much, much, much lesser. In fact, if you were to see this table, you would find out that the highest consumptions are relating to meat. The highest consumption is for the chocolate, which is 24,000 liters per kg of chocolate. But then chocolate is not a diet. You don't eat it in your lunches and dinners. As far as foods are concerned, the highest is beef, 15,500. So cow is extremely important and very special because its meat is having the highest, is locking the highest amount of water inside. 15,500 liters per kg of beef. As far as pork is concerned, it is 4,800 liters. As far as chicken is concerned, it's 3,900 liters per kg. So you run into several thousands of liters of water to produce 1 kg of non-vegetarian item. And contrast this to tomato, which is 180 liters per kg, or to potato, which is 250. So you can modify your diet and actually save water in a water scarce world. Remember that they have been saying that the next world war will be on water. So saving water is extremely important, and especially in those areas where water is already in scarcity. So water that we eat is extremely large, and merely by changing the type of food, merely by changing our diet from a non-vegetarian origin to a vegetarian origin, we can save huge amounts of water, and therefore we can avoid potential wars over water in the times to come. In fact, this idea, CV is Stockholm International Water Institute in Sweden, and each year they have a huge kind of gathering of experts, various, not just technical experts, but all kinds of people who are working in the water related areas. And this year they floated a new kind of chapter, and they said that you give us the best ideas which can save water for humanity. And this was going vegan, which means you assume a vegetarian diet devoid of meat, devoid of dairy products. This year, this idea won. I was one of those who nominated this idea. This idea won by a huge margin, 58% votes for this. This event is not just held by the Stockholm International Water Institute, but also by United Nations Environmental Program and Rockefeller Foundation. So there are plenty of agencies which are now recognizing that meat eating is something which is dangerous for a resource as important and as crucial to us as water. We will now proceed on with this and see so we have already examined the impact on land, impact on health, and then on land, and then on water. And let's see the most important part of it, which is the impact on air or atmosphere. Now this is resulting into what is called climate change or global warming. Meat production actually entails not just huge footprint of water. Meat production also entails very large carbon footprint. So if you eat meat, you actually are kind of sequestering or taking inside your body huge amount of carbon. Meat production threatens the very existence of life on this planet, and we'll see as to how this is. In fact, global warming is one of the most talked about subjects in the West. Unfortunately, Indian media has not been eager to raise this kind of important issue. Indian media is probably more busy in secular, non-secular, communal issues. It's more busy in Bollywood, it's more busy in cricket. But this is a life-threatening kind of a situation in which our globe is right now. And what we know, if you consider the statement of some of these people, typically Dr. Rajendra Pachauri, he says that in the next 2 to 3 years will determine our future. James Hansen, director of NASA, NASA's Goddard Institute, says that we are really running out of time. In fact, this or next year or the 2 years are very crucial. Maneka Gandhi has already said it, that we may wake up tomorrow and discover that there is nothing left for us. And Al Gore, former US vice president, who would have known all the policies, said that we have a full-scale planetary emergency because of global warming. So this is a big issue which is confronting the humans, not just humans, but actually it's of relevance to the entire life form on this planet. It's an unprecedented kind of situation in the entire human history. We have not seen global temperatures rise like this in our recorded history. So we do not know much about it, and we are not sure as to what this is ultimately going to lead to. So global warming and climate change, as I said, are most talked about. These are, I'll give a very brief introduction as to what this is for those who are not much aware about this. Global warming depends on greenhouse gas effect. Basically, it's just that the solar radiation comes to Earth, gets reflected from the Earth. When it gets reflected from the Earth, its wavelength changes, and generally there is a balance. So the heat radiations are coming to the Earth, and some of it is actually escaping. There is a balance. There is a nice balance in nature. But this balance has actually in nature has got disturbed, because now you have a layer of certain molecules which were not there earlier. So certain molecules which are called greenhouse gases have accumulated in our atmosphere, and they don't allow this radiation to actually escape and go out. It's like sitting inside a car. The car gets very hot. It's hotter than the outside temperatures, because the glass allows the radiation to come in, but when it gets reflected, when its wavelength changes, the radiation is not able to escape out. And therefore, same thing is happening here. Our earth is getting warmer each year, each day. Typically, greenhouse gases comprise of nitrous oxide, carbon dioxide, methane, water, and sulfur hexafluoride. Typically, if you were to examine as to what were the concentrations of these gases prior to the industrial revolution and after the industrial revolution, there has been a rise. And there has been an exponential rise, as this slide shows. For each of these, carbon dioxide, methane, nitrous oxide, there has been an exponential rise and buildup of these molecules inside our atmosphere. So our earth is getting heated all the time because the radiation is not able to escape out. It's shielded by this layer of these molecules. Pre-industrialized concentrations of CO2 were 288 part per million by volume, and they have risen to, now it's around, at the end of the century it was around 366, but now they have become around 390 or so. Methane 848, prior to industrial revolution it became 1800 parts per billion, and for N2O it's been 285 to a jump to 312 parts per billion. The global warming potential is very, very high for nitrous oxide. It's 310 times as compared to carbon dioxide molecule. So N2O is extremely dangerous, and also methane is dangerous in the sense that it has a global warming potential of 21 times, as 21 molecules of CO2 will give the same kind of global warming which one single molecule of methane will give. And the results are clear for all of us to see. Global average temperatures have gone up, global sea levels are rising all the time, and the snow cover at the Arctics is constantly, it's been on the decline. Global mean temperatures are now around 1 degree above the 1880 levels. So we have temperatures, and 1 degree seems to be 1 degree Celsius may not seem much to you, but world bodies are now saying that above 2 degrees Celsius there will be a tipping point when we don't know as to what will happen. So there will be a tipping point above that. So it has to be confined below 2 degrees Celsius. So if the global temperatures rise by more than 2 degrees Celsius, we don't know. It's quite possible that the entire life forms will vanish from this earth in case it rises rapidly. It continues to rise. So it's already risen by 1 degree Celsius. Total greenhouse gaseous emissions have increased by 70% in between 1970 and 2004. So in just 34 years, there has been a major rise. So there is a major buildup of these molecules now in the atmosphere. We are being told now by the scientists, typically from National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration of US, that each year our temperatures are rising. So each year appears to be hotter than the previous year. So 2015 is on track to become the warmest year of history that we have known. Each month of it is higher temperature as compared to the monthly temperatures of last year. And in fact, 2015 we have forecasts available, but 2014 we have data available, and which says that 2014 was the Earth's warmest year on record so far. So each year this is actually rising almost every year. In fact, if you were to read NOAA's State of the Climate published each year, you would find that greenhouse gases continue to climb. Record temperatures are being observed near the Earth's surface. In fact, in 2014, 20 European countries were experiencing the warmest year ever. Africa had also above average temperatures in 2014. Australia saw its third warmest year on record. Argentina and Uruguay had second warmest year on record. So temperatures are actually rising globally, and they have already risen by a mean of around 1 degree Celsius. Also what happens is global warming is impacting the El Nino effect, and therefore you will have varying kind of rains which spell again disaster to your food security. Sea surface temperatures are on a record high. Global upper ocean heat content is also on a, so it's everywhere. The land is getting heated, the sea is getting heated, and the upper atmosphere has also got heated. So it's heat accumulating inside the system now. And global sea levels are on a record high. So each year what we are finding is around 3 mm, 3.2 mm plus minus 4.4. So around 3.5 mm is the increase in the sea levels each year. Now this may not sound much for you, but for those island countries which are low, they have an existential kind of a crisis because sea will actually eventually consume them if it continues to rise. In fact, if you consider the 10 hottest years we had in the human history, recorded years, 9 of these were recorded ever since 2000. So this is a very, very serious thing, that the temperatures are actually just rising, and they are rising much faster than what our models had predicted actually. The Arctic continues to warm, and we'll see in a minute as to what has happened at the Arctic. The Antarctic also shows variable temperature patterns. Tropical cyclones are above average now. So each year what is happening is cyclones are increasing. So we have, by heating the earth, we are virtually playing with the entire meteorological kind of systems of the earth. Glaciers are melting. So you would have a typical picture of a glacier in 1941. In the same month, in 2004, this is the picture. So 1941, you had this kind of a picture. In 2004, same month, you come out with a different picture. You had this glacier in 1920. This is the picture from 1920. The same is this in 2005. Glaciers have melted to a very, very large extent. So the picture has actually completely altered in these 60, 70, 80 years. And since we humans don't tend to track it unless scientists who are at work track this, we don't know the situation, but it seems apparently that glaciers everywhere are retreating actually, they are just going back. Sea levels have been on the rise, so from the satellite imagery you can find out as to what is the sea levels, etc. Oceans are acidifying, coral reefs are bleaching, weather is becoming more and more extreme. Australia suffered a drought, worst kind of drought in 1,000 years. Similarly, US faced a lot of storms, typically the Katrina, which took it by storm in 2005. And if you see the major floods which are occurring in each decade, and if you see the situation in each of these continents, America, Europe, Asia, Africa, the picture is that major floods are on the rise every decade. So every decade is experiencing more and more floods. Small islands are sinking or eroding, and they have a real existential problem, as I said earlier. Rapid warming spreads havoc in Canada forests, and remember, forests are a sink to carbon dioxide, so they can take this carbon dioxide away and give you more oxygen. So forests actually are a kind of safety as against the onslaught of global warming, but because the temperatures are rising, what is happening is there are more of forest fires. So there was havoc in Canada's forests. Australia's forest fires were reported on a very high scale. Most startling evidence is from this. 1979, the Arctic was, you can see the 1979 and then the 2007 picture, same month. And the Arctic, much of the ice has gone. Now this melts, converts into water, levels rise. And it's melting much faster. Our models predicted certain time it will take to melt, but it seems that the onslaught is much, much, much higher actually. Now the point is, would we like to keep this thing going on? Because this thing going on means certainly an existential crisis for all life forms on this earth. Do we want the disappearance of small islands, which is inevitable kind of? Their local economies will get impacted by this. Worldwide disruptions will be caused because of global warming, and it seems that some of them are reporting that not just global warming will be affecting disruptions, it will also affect our food. So our food security will vanish because of this. And climate change, Independent reported that climate change could force 1 billion people out of their homes by 2050. So there will be a huge exodus of people flying to safety, flying for safety, as many as 1 billion people by 2050. And therefore, we need to kind of curtail this global warming. And United Nations has put this limit to 2 degree, the safe limit they are saying. They are saying that it is safe, we don't know whether it will be safe. But they are saying that let us limit it to 2 degrees Celsius, and already, as I said, already 1 degree Celsius rise has been there in global temperatures. This year in France, there will be a conference of parties, COP21, and it's also called 2015 Paris Climate Conference, and this is going to be the kind of watershed, in the sense that a legal UN for the first time is going to declare, probably during the negotiations, they aim to achieve a legally binding and universal agreement on climate change, with the aim of keeping global warming below 2 degrees Celsius. And this will be a global kind of event, attracting more than 50,000 participants from around 190 countries. So it's a big event where ultimately a legal framework is hopefully will be in place if countries agree. So it's a difficult task. It's a very difficult task the world is, and it's known in the scientific establishments that we are on the verge of a catastrophe. It's going to be a huge catastrophe in case this happens, and it's mitigating that is very difficult, because you have to take a consensus of so many countries. Would they be changing their lifestyles? Would they be ready to change the lifestyle of people? It will have political fallouts eventually. So it's not impossible, but we have to make a starting somewhere. What would be a greatest kind of starting? The greatest starting would be, number one, curb a sector which has highest global warming potential. So you first put brakes on a sector which is most impacting the global warming, number one. Start with your diet, because individuals, if we can't do anything else, at least we can make dietary changes. All charity begins at home, in fact. If you read a book released by United Nations, FAO again, Food and Agricultural Organization of the United Nations, way back in 2006, this is 9 years now, it's called Livestock's Long Shadow. And this book was not just written by these people, but also a lot of people from Germany, experts from UK, USA, France, Switzerland, Denmark, etc. were involved in this. So it's truly a kind of global scientific document which we have in our hands. It says that world's 1.5 billion cattle are most to blame for this global warming. In fact, livestock are responsible for 18% of the greenhouse gases now, 18%, and this is one sector which is posing the highest danger. So all cars, you combine the emissions from all the cars, all the planes, all other forms of transportation, put them together, the emissions from the livestock sector are actually higher than all forms of transportation. So it's a huge kind of a sector which is really to be dealt if global warming is to be kind of curtailed and put into control. So you had independent reporting that cow emissions are more damaging to planet than CO2 from cars. Also ABC News reporting that global warming culprits are cars and cows. So it's known in the West, and it's known to the common people, because there the media had actually reported this much earlier, that actually cows are to be blamed, that typically meat eating is to be blamed for this kind of crisis. Unfortunately, that awakening did not come into the Indian media, and people here are still not knowing as to what impacts it can have on our lives. Livestock emits all three: CO2 through deforestation, because you cut down the forest, so CO2 is net that much of CO2 will be evolved. Also what happens is, particularly the ruminants, they produce methane inside their stomachs. So cow will produce kind of CH4 or methane. So cow is more dangerous in that sense, because methane will not be produced by chickens, but will be produced by cows. And also manure management, which is typically again coming from the non-vegetarian sector, nitrous oxide is also contributed because of manure management. So you put manure into the fields to grow the feed, and then part of that. So greenhouse gases are emitted from the rumen fermentation and livestock waste. CO2 is released when previously forested areas are gone to grazing lands. CO2 is also released when you grow food, when you use fossil fuel for producing feed for the animals. Nitrous oxide emissions are occurring from leguminous feed crops and from chemical fertilizers which are applied to the feed crops. So, you have to grow a lot of feed actually for these animals, and it's from there that nitrous oxide and other kind of emissions are coming up. Also what happens is livestock waste emits 30 million tons of ammonia to the atmosphere. The FAO data is saying that 18% of overall 18% of global warming is actually being caused by this sector, which is more than the emissions, combined emissions from the transportation sector. So, this is a huge kind of a finding, and although the share of carbon dioxide is very less, and we saw earlier that carbon dioxide does not have that kind of potential. The potential was for carbon dioxide for creating global, you see the third row there in this table. The global warming potential, if carbon dioxide has 1, then relatively methane has 21 times and nitrous oxide has 310 times, and therefore CO2 is very less in this sector, 9%, but 37% of all methane is actually coming from the livestock sector, as well as 65% of nitrous oxide, and nitrous oxide is 300 plus times more potent as compared to carbon dioxide. So, the proportion of these two is pretty high actually. Also what has happened is Food and Agricultural Organization of UN has also come out with a report in 2013, and if you see this figure, it says that livestock production from the ruminants is producing as much as 3.5 giga tons of greenhouse gases. So, the highest production is coming from the livestock ruminants actually, which typically includes cows. And if you see the meat, beef actually, from the beef it's coming to 2.9 gigatons. So, it's highest in the beef sector. Pig meat is only 0.7 as compared to 2.9 there, and chicken is also 0.2. So, the contribution of chicken is relatively less, pork is a little higher, and beef is extremely high, And remember, beef had a special position with regard to water locked inside. So, not just the water footprints, but also the carbon footprints are the highest in case of beef. Size of the meat sector has been very large. To give you some idea of what this size is, basically, India's planned expenditure in 2015 and 16 is set at nearly 71.5 billions. US dollars in terms of US dollars. So, this is our planned expenditure each year. As compared to this, in 2009, meat and poultry industry sales totaled in US alone, they totaled $154.8 billion. So, this was more than 2 times our planned expenditure each year. These sales figures are extremely high, and even small countries like UK or France or Germany they have pretty high kind of sales figures. So, it's a big market, and this market is growing all the time. So, meat industry is kind of growing. It's a huge industry, and it's growing at a rate of around 4% a year, and it will be around 640 billions industry in 2015, which is around 9 times of our planned expenditure, of India's planned expenditure as a whole country. The food industry, in fact, is spending around $33 billion each year in advertising alone. So, they want you to eat more meat by putting in around $33 billion each year. This is a huge industry which is kind of growing at in a number of ways by manipulating the consumer choices, putting in more money into advertising industry and so on and so forth. US, if you see the data on consumption per person per year. So, per person per year globally we consume on an average, we consume around 42 kg, 41.9 to be precise, kg of meat every year, 42 kg of meat every year globally. US consumption is 120, okay, which is 3 times, almost 3 times. So, an average person in US consumes 3 times of the global average person, and in India is 4.4 kg per person per year, which is around 1/10 of the global average. And not just in India, we'll again examine this data later on in this presentation, and we'll see that But right now what you can clearly see is that US has a very, very high meat consumption, and relatively India, etc., have a very low consumption, 1/10 of the global average. They are 3 times the global average in US. Growth of population and meat supply, if you see this chart, you would find out that meat supply is actually outstripping the population growth. So population is increasing, global population is increasing all the time, but the meat consumption is increasing at a much faster rate. Also, the meat market has witnessed positive growth. So if you see this chart, you would find out that there is tremendous amount of increase in the meat consumption world over actually. And globally, the production of meat is projected to more than double from a 2000, that is end of the century level, to 2050. So in these 50 years, the global production of meat will almost double in this 50 years time. These are the forecasts. Now the problem is that meat sector, as we have seen, is the highest has the highest global warming potential. Okay, number one, it's the highest kind of 18% of global warming is caused because of the meat sector, and therefore it has the highest potential. Number one. Number two, the size of the sector is extremely huge. It's very large. Number three, the meat industry is actually witnessing a growth all the time, and therefore it's a very critical kind of a situation. Unless you change your dietary patterns, unless we decide not to eat meat, this is going to increase all the time, and therefore what will happen is the global warming potential will keep on increasing all the time. The contribution of the livestock sector will be increasing all the time actually, and this will drive, this alone can drive the temperatures very, very high. If you see the emission factors of various food products, and this is important, beef has the highest emission factor. On a scale, you can say that it is around 1330 grams of CO2 equivalents. What happens is we convert everything into CO2 equivalents. So per 100 gram of beef, you get 1330 grams of CO2. Pork is 320, and chicken is 340, around those levels. Potatoes 20, roots and vegetables 16, fresh fruits 40. So if you have a vegetarian diet, you emit much less of these gases. In fact, Scientific American in 2009 published this diagram, and it says, it puts potatoes, apples, and on one side, and on another side it puts chicken, pork and beef, and you can see the cow standing at the top. So there is something special about cows with regard to water footprints, with regard to the global warming footprints, carbon footprints. So the dietary choice is obvious. Eating meat is not sustainable anymore. If you keep on eating meat at this rate, and if the industry continues to grow, this is not sustainable. This will collapse. The system will collapse, and it will collapse into something which we don't know what will happen. I mean, it can be unprecedented kind of destruction of all humankind and all other life forms. And it's our choice now to either choose vegetarian diet or be ready for extinction, and if not extinction, then at least there will be a lot of pain actually and misery coming to the humankind. Everyone gets affected by your choice of food. So choosing your diet is not a personal matter. It's not, because what you eat in your thali or plate is going to affect me and my children and your children also. So it's about the future of the planet actually. It's what you eat decides the future of the planet. United Nations has this to say: a substantial reduction of impacts from agriculture would only be possible with a substantial worldwide diet change away from the animal products. So this is what United Nations is saying. Our media has taken a contrasting opposite stand on this, and we'll re-examine that later on. But let us see the scientific realities. Meat production entails large number of diseases that affect humans. Number two, large forest clearances. Number three, enormous land erosion and degradation. Number four, serious loss of biodiversity. Number five, large chemical production in the form of insecticides, pesticides, herbicides, fertilizers. All of this comes back into the food and comes back to your bodies. Deterioration of water qualities, enormous water footprints in a water scarce world, and enormous carbon footprints. So in every single way that it can affect, it affects the environment. Meat eating is a hugely unsustainable kind of a practice. It has to be given up sooner or later. So it's highly unsustainable practice, and either we have to abandon it or strictly curtail this and control it. If we do not do this in the next few years or next 1 or 2 decades, we don't know what kind of impacts it will have overall on this planet. So the sooner the better, the brakes are put, it will be sooner the better. Also what happens is, eating meat is just not an environmental luxury, but it's also a crime now. In the sense, because you are playing with not just your individual health, you are playing with the health of the entire planet actually when you are eating meat. Your food affects me and everybody else. Your plate decides the future of the present and the next generations on this planet. Therefore, eating meat cannot be a matter of personal choice for any individual. And this is what, this also decides and settles the question which was raised by Arnab Goswami, when he said that it's a question of respecting the religious sentiments. Why don't we ban pork and chicken and other things also? Yes, we can ban them. In fact, all meat needs to be banned. But the point is, if the first control is to be put, it has to be put on something that is affecting us most, and that is the cow's meat, the beef, for obvious reasons. Also, in particular, beef eating will have greater adverse impacts than any other type of meat. So all meat needs to be kind of curtailed and controlled, but especially the beef. And this is not a question of religious and equality here. It's not a religious question at all. It's a scientific question. Also, it's a problem more of US than of India as such. In US, what is happening is they have 3 times the average consumption of global average consumption. So their consumption is pretty high, and US Department of Agriculture each year is putting $550 million, bombarding Americans with slogans and advertisement for consuming more and more meat. So Americans have to actually change their dietary habits to a very large extent, and Americans have been most reluctant in changing their dietary habits, as we have seen in earlier kind of issues. Americans eat more meat per person than any other people on the earth. Americans have twice the obesity rates, twice the diabetes rates, and nearly 3 times the cancer rates. 35,000 miles of American rivers are already polluted. So this is what has been the consequence of meat eating on America. We can take lessons from that. We can be intelligent without suffering. Actually, we can take lessons from America on this. And US livestock is responsible for 55% of erosion, 37% of all pesticides applied, 50% volume of antibiotics used, 32% of nitrogen load, 33% of phosphorus. US livestock has been particularly kind of damaging the earth, and this is one earth. I mean, it will not happen that global warming takes place and we will not be affected. So even by, not just by what we are eating, but even by what an average consumer in the world is eating, and even by what US people are eating, we get affected. There is a lot of subsidy given to this sector. So meat is pretty cheap. Even in India, the prices have become lopsided. For example, chicken would be around 140, 150 per kg, but the pulses, the dals particularly, have become more costlier. So it becomes cheaper to eat meat actually sometimes. This is something which is ridiculous, and this should be controlled on the level of policy. American government is spending $38 billion each year to subsidize the meat and dairy industry. So each year they spend $38 billion, but they don't subsidize fruits and vegetables. They subsidize it only to the extent of $17 million, which is just 0.04%. So 4 in 100 parts, 0.04 in 100 parts. That's very, very small. Environmental cost of meat eating is enormous and unsustainable, and only a vegetarian diet can sustainably add to the environment and health benefits. So there's absolutely no doubt, if you see the scientific facts, and if you see it alone from the viewpoint of scientific facts, this is unsustainable. Eating meat is unsustainable. You have to change your diets. Okay, let's see the meat consumption in India, typically the patterns which are occurring. So again, we go back to the table and see that world average is around 42 kg per person per year. We consume hardly 1/10 of that, 4.4 kg. Bangladesh consumes 4 kg per year per person per year. Bhutan 3.3, Sri Lanka 6.3, Nepal 9.9, Pakistan 14.7. This is pretty low. As compared to the global averages, this is not even a third of the global average. I mean, not even a fourth. It's very, very, very less. Our meat consumption is around 1/10 of the global average per capita, and it's just 4% of what. So an average person, an average Indian is eating just 4% of what an average American is eating with regard to meat. And in the entire Indian subcontinent, the consumption is very low, despite a sizable Muslim presence there, who particularly eat kind of meat. So despite that, and this is a huge subsidy of Sanatan Dharma, because ultimately, even where the population is Muslim, they are all converted Hindus in any case. They own this culture in any case. They have this cultural legacy. And it is the subsidy of Sanatan Dharma to the entire world that we consume so less meat. This entire subcontinent, not just India. In Hinduism, as we all know, the cow is kind of revered. We have all devatas present inside the cow, and it is revered and worshipped. Meat consumption in the Indian subcontinent is way too less, and this is primarily the subsidy of Sanatan Dharma. It's a great heritage, and it's the duty of Indian leaders to actually not just promote yoga outside, but also to promote vegetarianism outside India. So just as yoga has been taken out, we should be the leaders in showing the world as to how to change their diets. Vegetarianism also aligns with our cultural values. It would be in our national interest to promote and espouse this scientific cause, because ultimately this will be done. See, even if we don't do it now, the point is 10 years later or maybe 5 years later, when the world bodies start to kind of mount pressure, we'll be doing it ultimately. We have to do it. Everyone has to do it in the world. It's a question of mutual existence. It's a question of existence of the complete planet. So this has to be done sooner or later. But we can be leaders in this. It would be in our national interest to promote and espouse this scientific cause of deep environmentalism and emerge as a world leader in showing the world a path out of the impending catastrophe. Unfortunately, what has happened is we have had very unscientific kind of debates, crusades. A large section of the Indian media has been up in arms. It's raising crusades against any kind of tinkering with their thalis, with their diets and so on and so forth. But this entire crusade is anti-environment, it is anti-human rights, and it is also anti-animal rights. It is also inimical to our national interests. So this was the meat consumption. Now we consume very less, but the point is we are amongst the largest exporters of meat in the entire world. This is a very different kind of a picture here. So we consume very less, but we export much of the meat to outside countries. If you see this chart, you would find out that we are one of the major exporters. This is coming from, again, FAO, Food and Agricultural Organization of United Nations. US data says that in 2014, India was the highest beef exporter in the entire world. So India and Brazil together kind of exporting around 43% of this beef. So we are one of the in fact we are the highest beef exporters to the entire world. And this is alarming actually, because India is, in fact in 2015 also the projections are saying we will again be the largest exporters of beef. And if you see the table here, you would find out that India, Brazil, Australia and US are at the top, exporting more than 10% of beef, but India is the highest, kind of 23.5% of all beef is actually coming from India. This is a political hypocrisy of the previous governments, because they made policies and they made deliberate policies so that India emerged as the largest exporter of meat or beef. It did not matter to these politicians that such policies were against the cultural value system of a majority of Indians. So this is very strange that they made policies which were against the cultural value system of a majority of Indians. and this is an ancient kind of a civilization with ancient kind of cultural value systems. This was completely overlooked. It also did not matter to them that such policies were against human and animal rights and were outrightly anti-environment. It also did not matter to them that they were actually exporting food. So what happens is we are exporting meat, but the kind of damage which is done to the land, the kind of damage which is done to the biodiversity, the kind of damage which is done to the water bodies remains in India. So we export this meat, but deforestation, water quality degradation, water depletion, biodiversity depletion, all of this would happen within the confines of our land. So we are actually degrading our natural resources in the process of exporting meat. These policies were not only culturally and scientifically anti-national, but they were also harming the nation's interest in a number of other ways. They were also a constitutional scandal in the sense that it is in direct opposition to the principles, to the provision of directive principle which is enshrined in the Indian Constitution, which implies that these policies were in direct contravention to the declared intent of the founding fathers of the Constitution. So when we took this stand of exporting more and more meat to outside countries, we were actually going against the wishes of the founding fathers of the Constitution. If you read the directive principles, the 48th point there says, last two lines, preserving and improving the breeds and prohibiting the slaughter of cows and calves and other milch and drought cattle, the state shall endeavor to do all of this. Okay, so it's state's duty actually to be doing this. It reflects poorly on activism in India because nobody filed a PIL for this. Generally a PIL would be filed on every single occasion. A terrorist comes and kills people, PIL would be filed to kind of give him rights, give him justice. But the same people did not find it appropriate to file a PIL in this case. And therefore this remained unknown to people. We know it through the media news now that we have become the largest producers of beef, exporters of beef in that sense. It is the moral responsibility of the present government not to carry on the momentum of policies of the past government, because this is nothing but coming from the past governments. That momentum has to be kind of stopped and protect the environment and national interests by reversing this evil policy of the previous governments, and thereby act in a just manner that upholds the promises made to the people of India by the founding fathers of the Constituent Assembly. So meat exports need to be controlled and meat consumption needs to be regulated. So we have to act on both sides. Number one, consumption has to be regulated. Number two, the exports have to be kind of curtailed. How can meat consumption be regulated? It's pretty simple. Either ban it, and if you can't ban it because there are people who protest, it's simple. You have a fair taxation kind of to be imposed on meat. For example, you take cigarettes. The actual cost would be much less, but the taxes are 2 times, 3 times, 4 times as compared to the actual cigarette, because it's causing harm to the society. Now this one is actually, the meat is actually kind of threatening to take all life away from this planet, and therefore the taxes should be imposed on meat. And tax on meat needs to be imposed in proportional to the environmental damages it does. So for example, when you had potato emitting around 1/65 of the emissions as compared to beef, then the cost of beef should go around 65 times just for the emissions as compared to a potato. Similarly for water footprints, it should be around 50 to 70 times again. And similarly for the land degradation. So if you combine all the factors together, you would find that the actual cost of beef, for instance, should be at least 150 to 200 times as compared to the cost of potato. So it should be around 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 rupees per kg. So if you want to eat meat, eat, but at that cost. And this is a fair kind of a calculation. I mean, you can't have your cake and eat it too. You can eat it, but there has to be a cost paid to. And let's see who in the media will be able to afford this. There will be many, I hope, they are rich. Public consumption of meat needs to be restricted also in line with the alcohol and cigarettes. So just as you can't take alcohol outside, there are specific places you should be able to take meat there, not in front of everyone, because that has a demonstration effect. If you eat meat, others are encouraged to eat meat, which is a bad practice. Health impacts of the meat need to be taken into account while seeking health insurances. So if you go for a health insurance, they will ask you whether you are a smoker or not. If you are a smoker, sometimes the health insurance is not given to you, otherwise there is a premium. The same thing should happen here. If you eat meat, pay a premium actually and get your health insurance, because in any case, as we have seen, it leads to huge amount of cancers, diabetes, cardiovascular diseases. So actually we are subsidizing them in one sense. Let's see what is the role and responsibility of Indian media with regard to meat exports. Journalists are opinion makers in the society, and they have huge responsibility therefore in educating the society on scientific lines. They should be doing this on scientific lines rather than spreading superstitions in the society. Media should have educated people on scientific lines, but instead they took a parochial stand that was outrightly emotional, personal, unscientific, biased, mischievous and criminal actually. They made this debate into a standoff between communal and secular forces. I mean, this was not a debate. This was not something which was to be debated. They have taken a very different line as compared to the facts of the case. Several journalists were actually inclined to show the government and the RSS and the cultural value system of the majority of this nation in poor light. They had obvious political motives in doing this, because all the facts, all the scientific facts were completely ignored in this debate. And those posing as liberals were actually illiberals. So when they said that those who are opposing the ban, those who are for the ban are illiberal, actually they were themselves illiberal in that sense. So they wished to eat meat at the cost of others. So this is what was happening. So they were calling others as illiberal, but in reality they themselves were illiberal. They have called those favoring the ban as bullies. And this is what was said by Barkadat, I suppose. But reality is that they were themselves bullying their views, trying to bulldoze their personal opinions and biases on Indian society when they were saying that bans should not be put. So this is what Barkadat, the bottom most kind of ellipse, you would see that they come after you because they think because they are bullies, ignore. The point is, who was a bully? Were the persons who were saying that meat should not be eaten were bullies, or were the persons who were kind of bullying their ways, trying to bully their ways by taking this debate into the domain of secular versus communal versus liberal versus illiberal, all kinds of, who was trying to bully their way? This is something to be thought by the Indian media. They have deliberately taken the debate out of the purview of the science. In fact, when I gave you the list, they interviewed everyone. They interviewed Bollywood stars, they interviewed fashion stars, they interviewed saints, Hindu saints, to put them on defensive. They interviewed Muslim religious leaders who were aggrieved. They interviewed politicians of all shades, activists of all shades, but the scientific view was almost never taken. So they were deliberately taking the debate out of the purview of science and putting into the realm of superstitious belief that meat eating is a personal matter. And this is a belief, and beliefs can be completely wrong. This was a belief that my thali is not going to affect you. It's a belief, but the reality is that it's going to affect everyone else around you. Worse, they have polarized the entire society, and this is most criminal actually. They have polarized the entire society with their personal opinions, biases, philosophical disorientations and political alignments, giving it a communal color and spreading hatred in the society, and this culminated into violence later on. Remember what happened, just very unfortunate. But this entire debate on emotional level was highly unprofessional and was criminal. Actually, some of them need to be prosecuted and put into jail for inciting emotions to that extent, where people actually start to kill others. With regard to India becoming the highest meat exporters, there was no expose. So we became highest exporters. It didn't happen overnight. We built up that through policies, through dozens of years of policies, maybe, or at least 5, 6, 10 years of policies. And then what happened was there was no expose on this. Only recently we have to come to know that this is what has happened. The same press goes gaga over the abuse of animals. So if an animal is abused even in a film, they would have problems with the animal rights. But they didn't talk of animal rights at all when we became highest beef exporter in the world. Their hypocrisy also becomes clear from the fact that many of them were busy writing editorials on environment. So they were trying to project themselves as saviors of environment many times. But simultaneously, they were blind to the obvious in the pursuit of their secular policies, and Indian media completely failed to highlight this issue. Most shamefully, actually, several of the journalists and media persons made the meat ban issue to be a communal versus secular debate. Sandeep Roy typically said it very clearly. Food bans actually test our ideas of secularism. Their hypocrisy is obvious from the fact that while they defended secularism, so they were all the time defending secularism, okay, which is a concept that was introduced in the constitution later on by a 42nd amendment of the constitution in 1976 during times of emergency, when the entire opposition was actually jailed. So this was something which they were highly cherishing, a provision which was put in undemocratically in emergency time by jailing the entire opposition, that was being valued over the idea of cow protection, and some of them were kind of completely against the provision of cow protection in the original constitution, so which comes from our founding fathers. It is time to remove, in fact Jagannathan said that it's time to remove the idea of cow protection or prohibition from the constitution. So on one side they were deeply appreciating the provision of secularism which has been brought undemocratically into the Indian constitution, and at the same time they were actually neglecting the original provisions of the constitution. In their enthusiasm to establish their liberal secular credentials, the journalists also ignored the fact that in 2005, Honorable Supreme Court of India had already made a judgment, and that was they upheld the constitutional validity of anti-cow slaughter laws enacted by different state governments in India. So Supreme Court had already upheld this provision, and yet they are now demanding that this provision be repealed. So this goes not just against the founding fathers' wishes on the constitution, but also this goes against the orders of the highest court of this country. This is the kind of stand they have been taken. It's been deliberate, it's criminal actually. These votaries of modern secularism were in fact ignorant of India's history and political movements. You have to look at Wikipedia and you will find these. The Mughal Emperor Babur in his Wasiyat writes this instruction to Humayun. And I would read only the bold parts here, and in particular refrain from the sacrifice of cow. He is telling Humayun to refrain from the sacrifice of cow, for that way lies the conquest of the hearts of the people of Hindustan. So if you want to conquer the people's heart in Hindustan, he directed Humayun not to kill cows. And the subject of the realm will, through your royal favor, be devoted to you. So if you want their loyalties, don't kill cows. This was the simple principle which Babur gave to Humayun. Unfortunately, the democratic governments elected by votes became so kind of selfish that they did not even remember this, that if you really want to win over the loyalty of the people, you should not be killing cows, because this is the majority. And democracy is actually all about majority. Later Mughal emperors Akbar, Jahangir and Ahmad Shah also kind of put selective restrictions on the cow slaughter ban. So they were actually banning cow slaughter to some extent. But it originates from Babur himself actually. They were also not knowing the history of political movements in India. In 1966, Jayaprakash Narayan wrote a letter to the then Prime Minister Indira Gandhi. And he writes, "For myself, I cannot understand why in a Hindu majority country like India, where rightly or wrongly, there is such a strong feeling about cow slaughter, there cannot be a legal ban." So he asked for a legal ban. Of course, he didn't have scientific data at that time, so he was not sure, and he wrote, whether rightly or wrongly, but at least the sentiments of the people, majority of the people should be respected. This is unfortunately forgotten by not just by the media, but even by his own disciples like Lalu Prasad Yadav, Mulayam Singh Yadav, who actually owe their existence to Jayaprakash Narayan. Role and responsibility of Indian media, if it's very, very evident that the Indian media has been extremely biased in its analysis, and they have given wide publicity to the issue without actually knowing any of the scientific facts, or at least maybe deliberately ignoring these scientific facts. In fact, there was a beef party. If you remember, there was a beef party at Osmania University, and even JNU tried to organize a beef party. So these were the JNU intellectuals who were saying that this is a communal versus a secular kind of a issue, and we'll organize beef party in opposing the bans which are being put on the cow slaughter. And these are intellectuals. I mean, someone has said that intellectual is somebody who has an ideology to defend, and that ideology is such that he would deny the obvious. In this case, it was obvious as to what are the facts, and these obvious facts are mostly denied either in French or in English. So in 2012 actually, what happened was Delhi High Court had to ban this beef party at JNU. So it never took place, but it took place at Osmania University, and our media gave huge publicity to these parties. Actually, it was going gaga over these parties, enjoying as to what the debate was in terms of secular versus the communal issues. Even the JNU Student Union president said this: firstly, a society and a country that claims to be secular should not put a ban on any food habit. It is the people's choice what they want to eat. Now, this was the kind of stand which was taken by JNU intellectuals. While the illogical, shameful, unscientific and blatantly communal stand of the media taken about the Osmania University case, about the JNU case, was highlighted and advertised highly by the Indian media, the same media never reported as to what was happening in the outside universities. And this is not from now. In 2009, ever since 2009, the University of California, Los Angeles has been having what is called beefless Thursdays. Now, I mean, you can imagine this situation. You put a beefless Thursday on some Indian university campus, and there would be huge amount of protest, secular, communal, and then Thursday. I mean, this is doubly insulting actually. So, but strangely, University of California, Los Angeles, since 2009 has been having beefless Thursdays. You can search their site, you will find this. I have given you the link address and actual picture. They have also come out with posters which say that cows generate methane gas, which is 23 times more potent than a greenhouse gas like carbon dioxide. They say that beef requires more than 1500 gallons of water per pound to produce. They are saying that 2.2 pounds of beef generates the same amount of carbon dioxide as an average car emits over 155 miles. So you take a 2.2 pounds beef, and this will be emitting the same amount of greenhouse gases as when you run your car for 155 miles, okay, which is how much, I mean, more than 250 kilometers. And they say that saturated animal fat in red meat increases the risk of heart disease and other colon cancers, etc., etc. So this is their poster, which I have put in here. They set this example by not serving beef one day a week, and they said this: on an average, we serve up to 1000 pounds of beef a day in the dining halls. By not serving beef for one day, we can save 1.5 just for one day if they are not serving on their campus. These are huge universities. So since they have taken a decision not to serve beef on Thursdays, 1.5 million gallons of water can be preserved and prevent over 2,600 pounds carbon dioxide equivalents from being emitted into the atmosphere. The initiative was started in the spring quarter of 2009 and has been embraced positively by the majority of the residents. They conducted surveys of this, and people were convinced, because if you take scientific line to the students and to the future generations, I mean, why will not they be convinced? I mean, it's obvious actually. It's about your own existence actually. So, and why did they make this bold choice? It has got everything to do with the students' health and the well-being of the planet. Most shamefully, JNU and Osmania University behavior was on the opposite end, and actually most irresponsible in this context. This shows the kind of journalism. So journalists were highlighting these beef parties, but they never highlighted what had happened at University of California, Los Angeles way back in 2009. This shows the kind of journalism that is prevalent in India, which is highly biased. Journalists freely gurgle their personal opinions, they impose their unscientific views on others, and they impose superstitious political biases and inclinations and this ultimately leads to spread of hatred and untruth in the society. So they have been responsible for the spread of so much of hatred on these issues, which are completely into the domain of the science. This intellectual dishonesty and intellectual bankruptcy of the media is most condemnable. Emerging scientific evidence on the subject is very, very strong, and it is so compelling that media will have to finally change their stance. So it is going to happen. I mean, it will not happen overnight, but this is certainly going to happen in the light of the scientific facts. The vegan movement is fast emerging from the West. So what is happening is, in the West, lots of people are now adopting vegetarian diets and the vegan diets without even the dairy products. And this will ultimately, because our media has been aping the West, when it comes from the West, probably they will change their stand overnight in that case. So the idea of vegetarianism now becoming extremely popular in the West has been an ancient idea and the norm in India for ages. And this was advocated by a lot of religions of the East. So Jainism, Buddhism, Hinduism, all of them advocated this. And therefore, it's no wonder that despite having a population of 17.5%, our contribution is very, very, very less. Let's not increase it. And surely the Indian media will realize the power of this ancient thoughts in the times to come when they take a scientific stand. They'll be forced to take a scientific stand at some time. Role of the Indian scientists also has been extremely poor. Being a scientist implies that these persons have to be extremely careful with their facts and with the words they utter. So they should be very, very careful about their facts and about the words which they say. Most scientific establishments were pathetically unaware of the issues which were facing the humanity and which were facing the planet on this scale. And there was hardly any input from the scientists so far. But yesterday, on 28th of October 2015, Indian Express has published a report in which it says scientists join intolerance debate, punish the trespassers of reason and rights. The panel, this is a panel which is constituted jointly by 3 national academies. And this was National Science Academy, New Delhi, the Indian Academy of Sciences, Bengaluru, and the National Academy of Sciences, Allahabad. So together these scientists came, and you have to actually see their statement to actually believe it. They have said this: when we become an independent republic, our founding fathers adopted the Constitution of India, which demands that its citizens abide by and uphold reason and scientific temper. So they wanted that reason and scientific temper should be upheld, which is a good thing. They also write, it is important that exemplary punishment should be given to such trespassers of reason and right. We also appeal to all sections of Indian society to raise their voices against such violated acts so that they are nipped in the bud. So their whole point was that there should be no violence, which is a good thing, but they never came out with any scientific fact. They never came out with any true kind of picture of the entire issue. They were making appeal from wherever the media had left. So they were making appeals on those lines. Another few top scientists combined together and met Pranav Mukherjee, our president, said, we the scientists are concerned about the recent developments with reference to intolerance, polarization and spread of communal hatred resulting in the death of innocent people. They never came out against the incidences of Northeast or against the incidences of Kashmir, but here they were up in arms. We urge you to take serious note of these developments and initiate suitable action. Nothing, no statement on science, nothing on scientific facts and figures. These top scientists did not give, or maybe they did not know or understand this issue, or they were just politically motivated. They did not give any discourse on science and the massive research which has happened in this area now. It's the United Nations itself which is saying all this. Instead, they focused on the rhetoric taken from where the media had left. This is thus the leftover of the Indian left. So basically, they are nothing but the leftover of the Indian left. It is a wonder that these war horses from the stable of leftist establishments were released at this late stage, so that they jumped into this secular versus communal debate. Where were they when ethnic cleansing was going on in Kashmir or in Northeast? They had nothing, no statements at that time. but their moral outrage is selective and now is just a bad political joke devoid of any elements of scientific temperament. So they were talking about scientific temperament actually. And they said, in fact, it was factually wrong. Their statement was factually wrong. What they said was, if you read their statement in bold, our founding fathers adopted the Constitution of India, which demands that its citizens abide by and uphold reason and scientific temper. So they said that our founding fathers were for the scientific temper, which is a factually wrong, because even the word scientific temper was included at the time of emergency after putting everyone in jail. So even this was done in 1976. The founding fathers never had put this word there, but they are taking the refuge of the emotions of the founding fathers. They are making it emotional. The appeal is made more emotional, but it's bare of facts actually. It's completely devoid of any facts. In case it's not known what kind of science they have talked about in their statements, because they are not talking about science at all. If they do not understand the cause and effect relationship between cow slaughter and the degradation of environment, they are not qualified to mouth such loaded terms as scientific temper, and in fact they are sitting in the top academies and have clearly demonstrated unscientific temper in the name of scientific temper. This leaves us with the last of the things. What can we do as individuals? Media doesn't act, scientists don't act, they have their own, scientists in the establishment have their own agenda. The role of the individual becomes important. Business as usual will lead to mounting kind of problems and eventual disaster in the very short run. Civil society seems to have an inadequate understanding of the scope of the problem. In an increasingly globalized world, which has 7 billion people on this globe, it is very easy to underestimate the power of individual action. We can just take a stand, what can I do? I mean, I'm just one of the persons. But the point is, the meat sector issue reminds that as an individual, we can act in our own realms, that it is our personal choices that can shape this planet. So we can make personal choices by not eating meat. The minimum we can do is change diet to vegetarian as compared to non-vegetarian diet. Our daily decisions as consumers multiplied by 1 billion will have a colossal impact on the health of the planet and on environment. So if we make just one change, and if each of us makes just one change, 7 billion people making just one change from a meat eating diet to a non-meat diet, there will be huge amount of change on this planet. Let's become agents of change by adopting a vegetarian diet in view of the facts and figures which have unfolded in the recent years by massive kind of research. I specifically appeal you to at least download and disseminate at least these 3 reports which I have given: Livestock's Long Shadow, Metal Atlas, and Tackling the Climate Change Through Livestock. So these 3, if you are able, and these are freely available on the internet, so you can just go to the website, download this, because this will give you all the United Nations data which will convince you that whatever I have stated is actually correct, and which should lead to action on, at least on part of the individuals, if nothing else. So if we disseminate that, probably pressure will mount on the media and scientific establishments to change everything. Thank you so much for being here.